Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts, sports journalist David Todd, and from SteelersDepot.com, Dave Bryan. Just a couple of Daves, chillin', talking Steelers. Now, here's Dave and Dave.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Dave. He's Dave Bryan of SteelersDepot.com, the place to get your latest and greatest Steelers information. And I'm David Todd. It's Season 9, Episode 39. And Dave, the Giants traded Eli Apple, not Eli Manning. The trade is a little bit underway here the past couple days.
Was there just a part of you that thought when Adam Schefter or whoever it was tweeted that out initially that maybe it was? Was there any part of you that believed that it might have been Eli Manning?
Yeah, because he actually did. He was kind to people. He tweeted the true tweet first. The Giants traded Eli Apple, and then he tweeted, or at least that's how it appeared on my timeline. And then I saw he tweeted Eli, but I did not see his real tweet first. I saw the Giants traded Eli ... And I was like, oh man.
Well,
not to be.
There was actually a small portion of me, because I saw it, I think, in the same order that you did, and there was actually a small part of me that thought, man, that actually kind of believed that, that it was possible. Look, Eli Manning. Boy, what a rough couple of seasons he's had here now, and you have to wonder how close to the end his time. Look, I mean, you go back to last season where he was kind of, how long did that benching or whatever last there? One game, but it makes you kind of wonder now at this point, and when you watch some of these games, look, he doesn't have a great offensive line. Let's be honest about.
They're awful. They're awful
about that, but he's missed too, and it just doesn't seem like he's got not on the same page with several of his receivers right now. You go and you watch that game last night. It looked like they were trying to work through it on the go, like they hadn't even practiced much of any offensively ahead of that game against the Falcons, and then you see that stuff that kind of happened near the goal line there late in the game.
One of the things for sure is you never expect mental mistakes from the Manning brothers. I mean, that was a disastrously bad decision-making there.
It really was there. But, look, they're out of it now. They traded. I was never a big Eli Apple guy. I think that guy.
He got 10th overall out of Ohio State, and then had his mom's issues, mom stuff and all that stuff coming out.
Yeah, you just look at some of the stuff related to him. And look, I understand the Saints didn't have a lot of draft capital when it comes like first round pick next year, and they had been rumored to possibly be in this, and I'm sure we're going to get to this, the Patrick Peterson saga, possibly being a trade, a landing destination possibly for Patrick Peterson, according to Peterson's cousin Bryant McFadden, former Steelers cornerback there. But I understand they had to do something there, maybe in New Orleans, to help strengthen that defense out, and I'm just not sure Eli Apple is the answer.
Well, it's interesting because look, one of the things that we've seen here that Dave and I see on Twitter through our feeds are, people imploring, and you can turn on sports talk radio in Western Pennsylvania and hear the same thing, people imploring the Steelers to go for it. Who knows whether, 10 days from now, I guess it's Tuesday is actually, I said the other day, it was Wednesday. Tuesday is the trade deadline, 4:00.
Why am I always the bad guy in all this? Because I try to give people the truth. The
likely scenario.
Right. Because I'm the realist here. Because I'm not like these. Right.
Also, listen, I think our listeners are not probably most of the people on Twitter either. Some of them are, but the point is, everybody says the Steelers need to go for it, which is a perfectly acceptable point of view to have. Neither Dave nor I. I'll take the moment here to speak for him, feel like that's an unreasonable opinion. We all know there are 31 other teams in the NFL, so it's unlikely that the Steelers would win. Maybe there are 8 teams in the realistic scenario of, think they can win a Super Bowl and this is something they should do. I don't know why the people think the Steelers are in a better situation to go do this than, or it's more important for the Steelers than the Chiefs or the Patriots or the Saints or the Vikings or, the Rams have lost some corners. Yeah, I understand there are cap issues that some teams may face, but listen, trust me, the numbers that we're talking about, anybody can get around the cap for Peterson's contract the rest of this year and 11 and 12 the next 2 years. Cap constraints aren't going to stop if somebody wants to get this deal done. It's going to be the cost involved. And yeah, we can say the Steelers should mortgage the house. But the idea of saying, wow, the Steelers' last 3 draft picks, first-round draft picks, haven't been great, so they should absolutely do the deal, that's not great logic in terms of how to think about the situation. It may be that your logic is he's way better than the first-round pick the Steelers are going to get in this draft. That may be fair to say, but kind of the logic of looking at past picks and saying the Steelers can't draft or they can't draft defensive backs, that's probably not the right approach when thinking about how to view Patrick Peterson.
Look, I get it. I understand why people are clamoring for this. Am I opposed to Patrick Peterson, seeing Patrick Peterson in a Steelers uniform? Absolutely not. I mean, I think it would be absolutely fun to see. I've been a Patrick Peterson fan dating back to his time at LSU. It's not that people think that I don't want this to happen. Look, none of us are going to shame Kevin Colbert into making this deal, right? People act like I've gotten like 3 emails this past week saying I should write a post imploring Kevin Colbert to do this. Why? Well,
the other thing is people feel like it's the choice is the Steelers trade for Patrick Peterson or they've thrown away the season. They've absolutely given up on the season. And it's as if no other bidders are out there or nothing else matters. If the Steelers want Peterson, they should go get him.
Press the trade button, David. Make it happen.
Right, that's it. Right. Run the trade machine, and Patrick Peterson's in black and gold.
Look, I get it. There are several reasons why it would work. Yes, from a cap standpoint, it worked. Yes, from a possible fit standpoint, I get all that. But you still have to acquire the player first and foremost. And as you said, and let's go ahead and dismiss the fact that the head coach of the Cardinals and the owner Bidwell and Wilkes have both said that this is not going to happen. Let's push that to the side first. Put yourself, David. I just got off a radio interview before we got on, so I'm a little bit fired up. I had to talk about this as well too. Let me ask you. You put yourself in the Cardinals' position here, knowing what you have in Peterson, knowing that he's still 28 years old, knowing that he's under a reasonable contract through 2020, all right, knowing how hard it is to draft to replace him, to draft a lockdown cornerback, knowing that really in today's NFL a franchise can turn around really quick. Look at the Rams. I mean, what a perfect example of an organization being able to turn around quick if they already have pieces in place on a defensive side of the football. Get a good coach come in there, get a young quarterback.
It might have their quarterback. Who knows? Jared Goff was awful his first year. Who knows with Josh Rosen?
Right. Okay. Honestly, David, let's assume that you're in charge of the Cardinals right now. What realistically would it take for you to deal Patrick Peterson?
This year's a gone season, so I have people tweeting me that you get 3 years of Patrick Peterson, whatever. You don't. Let's just use the real facts. You would get 2.5 years of Peterson. This year for the Cards is nothing. But maybe if you feel like you do like your head coach for culture and for effort and the things you're trying to instill in your team to be competitive in the second half of the year, could be very important. So there may be value to that. I'm not going to put too much value in that. But if you think you have your quarterback and you think Patrick Peterson is a key for your defense because, Josh Rosen's going to be in year 2 next year and year 3 the year after when you have Peterson, if you think you have your quarterback and you like your head coach, I would be very hesitant in a division where it looks like the Raiders aren't going to be good in the short term. The Seahawks, who knows if they're going to be good in the short term, and the Rams are just better than anybody. you certainly can fight for the wild card and be second place in that, fight to be second place in that division. So I would not bail on him unless I got, kind of Khalil Mack type return. Now, maybe that's crazy, but that's if I'm the Cardinals, I'm not just trading a one for a one because look, if I'm the Steelers, same thing I said about Khalil Mack, because the Bears had to pay Khalil Mack. So the difference in the different trade here is the Bears signed him to a long-term deal. For the Steelers, you're talking about 2.5 years versus 5. So that's obviously the downside. And the upside is you're guaranteed to get a star player versus a huge question mark of what you get with your first-round pick. So it's not quite like Khalil Mack, but man, you could trade for Patrick Peterson and sign him to 2 more years at $17 million a year and say, okay, now we've got 5 years of this guy. It's a great trade for us. So, but I don't think that'll do it for the Cards. I think if somebody offered me 2 number ones among the Cardinals, I'd do it. A 1 and a 5, I'm not doing it.
What about a 1 and a 3?
A 1 and a 3 this year, I might do it. I can't tell you enough about the rest of their defense to have a great feel for that. If I thought my defense was pretty good, I would hesitate. If I thought it wasn't very good, I would be more likely.
I think you tried to just put the Raiders in the NFC West.
Jesus, I did, right? Said the Niners, right?
wrong Bay Area team there.
I had my Bay Area team. Sorry about that.
By the way, I drove by this past weekend. I drove by where that new stadium's going to be. It's right. I mean, it's right slap dab. I mean, just right off. It's going to be a mess. No way in hell am I going to a game. Parking alone way. I don't even think they have all that figured out yet with that stadium. It's amazing how they're able to.
Where is it? Where is
it's going to be over there near Mandalay Bay on the other side of the freeway right there.
So right near the airport.
No. Well, I mean, a little bit. Where 15 goes, starts heading south there from Old Vegas.
Do they have room to throw a massive parking lot behind it?
I don't see how. Of course, I'm not an engineer, David. Damn it.
Fair enough.
But I'm not a doctor. Anyway, back to this thing. No way in the world would I deal Patrick Peterson away for anything less than a first and a third in 2019. I don't want a first next year and then a third the following year. I want to be able to draft next year and take a shot at maybe replace him. And when you what realistically, what overall pick will the Steelers have in the 2019 in the first round 2019 draft anyway, and are you going to be able to get a lockdown cornerback with that pick anyway to if you're Arizona? I just look, I get all these rumblings and all like that. I get Adam Schefter coming out and reporting that Peterson wants to be traded, and we'll see if he confirms or denies that at the end of this week, yada, yada. But no way in heck do I trade him away for only a first-round draft pick. And then let's assume that it's more than a first-round draft pick. In your right mind, do you see Kevin Colbert giving away a first and something else? And stop trying to throw Artie Burns in this deal. To sweeten the pot, like they don't have tape in Arizona.
Okay, so yes, I'm with you on all of that. So here's another thing that I don't understand the argument. Some guy tried to argue with me that nobody has made the Pro Bowl from pick 19 to 32 in the back end of the first round in the last 2 years, as if it was significant that those I think it was 12 picks each year. So those 24 picks. Or 26 picks, whatever it was. Those picks were the determining factor to whether good players could be drafted there. It didn't matter that 12 players drafted after that in those 2 drafts, including Kamara and Hunt last year, made the Pro Bowl, and a slew of guys 2 years ago. He was arguing that because it's a first round pick, you should only look at the end of the first round picks to decide, if it was how that pick works out. It's like saying, it's like not giving Kevin Colbert for credit for drafting Antonio Brown because he drafted him in the 6th round, or Tom Brady not being a good pick because they drafted him in the 6th round. They should have known he was the first-round pick. Or Juju in the 2nd round, he should have been the first receiver taken in the draft. This isn't an exact science. And if you cherry pick just looking at Kevin Colbert's first-round picks, yes, you can absolutely say the last 3 don't look particularly good. It's take me back 3, Dave. I mean, so we don't know what's going on in Edmonds. Artie doesn't. But who was 2 years ago?
What do you
Edmonds
mean?
This year. Who was the Steelers' first-round pick 2 years ago?
Watt.
Yeah, so T.J. Watt. So look, Edmonds, we don't know. T.J. Watt looks like a decent player. Bud Dupree. Artie Burns doesn't look great right now. Bud Dupree before that, hasn't been fantastic. But if you cherry pick just the first round picks and say, okay, that track record is uneven for sure in the last 4. But the point is we do have much larger data on Kevin Colbert. We can go back and look at the list of first round picks from the beginning, and it looks pretty good. And then you got to look at the rest of the balance of the draft as well. If you're evaluating a guy's ability to draft, I don't think you'd look and say when you're hiring a GM, can he get the first round pick right? Can that guy, his scouts, and can he make the good first round pick? Sure, that's part of it, but the rest of it matters as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, the way the Steelers do business, they put a lot of value in the draft. They like to develop via the draft. So yes, you probably you got to put some level of stock in there, and because of the way that maybe they haven't hit like many thought they have should have with their defensive players. I guess we could go back. I don't know how far you want to go back. I guess 2009, right? I mean, look, Ziggy Hood. I mean, people call Ziggy Hood a bust. I understand why they want to try to do it. Ziggy Hood was just kind of the best player ever available. He was a square peg that you were trying to fit in a round hole. He wasn't drop dead awful. The things that the defense that you ran, the things that you wanted to ask him to do when he was in a prime, it really didn't fit what he did. Yeah, Keenan Lewis in the 3rd round was, he only had half a good season there. You go back to some of the other defensive picks. Jason Worlds in the 2nd round of 2010 draft wasn't great. Obviously, Thaddeus Gibson in 2010 didn't work out. President Butler didn't work out. I get it when it go back a few years ago. Curtis Brown ended up being a good special teamer. That was about it. Cortez Allen never panned out as much as you wanted him to. Cameron Hayward, I mean, you would like to think that he's considered a good first round pick in 2011.
Sure. He was an all-pro last year. I mean, he's a very good pick.
They got Marcus Gilbert in the 2nd round 2011. Outside of him not being able to stay healthy and of course getting himself suspended here, he's been fine. Mike Adams, that pick really should have never happened in 2012. Nobody's going to argue with that. David DeCastro, money in 2012. Sean Spence, what happens if Sean Spence doesn't suffer that knee injury right out of the chute? With him. Who knows? We're never going to know the answer to that question. Then, Jarvis, absolutely a bust for the Steelers in 2013. I get it. I mean, I understand, but I mean, just, it's just not as easy as pressing a button for Patrick Peterson right now. And, what is it going to take to get him? Like I said, I get why people want Patrick Peterson. I think it would be fun to watch the Steelers navigate these next 2 seasons with Joe Hayden and Patrick Peterson, or next season and a half with both those guys on the back end there. But, the reality of the matter is that there are other teams probably looking to acquire, even if he's up on the trade block, there's other teams looking to acquire him as well, and Kevin Colbert's not going to overpay for a player. He's told us this past offseason that he's not going to mortgage the future just for one season, and there's no reason to believe that he's going to do it this year in trading for Patrick Peterson.
So I could beat this more to a pulp. Have we beaten this to a pulp enough? Or, I mean, what would you put the odds, 5 to 10%?
I would put it above 0%.
Okay, would you put it below 10%?
Yeah, I'd put it below 10%. I mean, how can you not?
Right. Okay. So we agree. But it is amazing that there are many people out there who feel like if Kevin Colbert called up Steve Keim, I think is he the GM of the Cards? If Kevin calls up the GM of the Cards and says, "Hey, Steve, we've got our number one, send Pat over," that's going to get that it's a done deal.
Yeah,
I mean, that's kind of the philosophy of a lot of Steelers fans.
Oh no, forgot to throw in Artie Burns there to sweeten.
Yeah, take Artie with. Yeah, just for the hell.
Yeah, we're gonna make an offer you can't refuse, Steve.
So that we can balance out the rosters. We both stay at 53.
Right, exactly. And I see people suggesting Le'Veon Bell. Look, they have this kid over there named David Johnson. They just gave a fat contract to him. Besides, you can't trade Le'Veon Bell right now because he's not under contract. Why can't people get that through their heads? I understand the fan side of people kicking in here. I do. I don't know how many times. I'm not the bad guy here. I'd like to see it. I think it'd be fun to see as well too. But it's not just as easy as Kevin Colbert pushing the Madden approved trade button or however that works.
All right, this is going to be a real-time live thing where we actually get our guest and change gears and get into looking at this week's opponent. Right without even interrupting the podcast, other than we have to give him a phone call. So we'll be right back talking Cleveland Browns and shifting gears with our buddy Scott Petrak. All right, so midweek, and we are obviously the Steelers are playing the Browns in Pittsburgh, 1 o'clock at Heinz Field, one of the not so many 1 o'clock games on the Steelers schedule as always. This one 1 o'clock at home. The weather's supposed to be reasonable. And another division game coming off the Bengal game, the bye, and the Ravens next week. A huge stretch here for the Steelers. And we're pleased to be joined again, second time this year, early in the season, by our buddy Scott Petrak, who covers the Bengals for the Chronicle Telegram and Medina Gazette. You can follow Scott on Twitter at his name, at Scott, Petrak. And it's Chronicle T, right, .com. And Scott, as always,
thanks for being.
Yeah.
No problem, guys. Yeah, and you can find everything at brownzone.com. That's probably easier.
Oh, brownzone.com, right. Forgot to mention that. So, Scott, man, you getting combat pay for having to work overtime every week?
It's unbelievable, isn't it? I mean, 4 games. I'll tell you what, you try to put up a story like instantaneous when the game's over. It's hard to do when the game gets decided on the last play every week.
Rewrite.
Yeah,
if I remember correctly, right. Of the 4 overtime games, the Browns are 1-2-1. Looking back,
correct.
Looking back, what should their record have been in the overtime games?
Man, that's a good question. You really can make an argument for 4-0. They could have beaten Pittsburgh, right? They missed a field goal at the end. They beat Baltimore. They had the ball against Oakland a couple of times with the chance to win, and that one they should have won in regulation.
Yeah, they get screwed by
this week
in that one.
Exactly. And then this week, Jamie Collins gets an interception. The Browns have 3rd and 8 at the Tampa 38. If you don't take a sack, you can at least try a long field goal, and Baker gets sacked. So, probably reasonably, I would say 3-1. But it's not out of the question to say they could have been 4-0.
Is everybody wants to make big grand conclusions and sweeping generalizations. Is their season over in terms of them being a realistic playoff contender?
I would say that just because in order to compete for this division, 9-6-1 is the worst you could do. So therefore they'd have to go 5-2. Right or no?
Yeah,
7-2. Let's go 7-2.
7-2, right?
For a team that's won 3 games in the last 2.5 years, I think you're asking too much.
Right.
But if they beat Pittsburgh, if they beat Tampa, and they're sitting at 4-3, I think we could have a real discussion. And like I said, those games were there to be won. The Browns aren't super talented, but they're talented enough this year where they're close enough to the rest of these teams that they're making the mistakes that are killing them. It's not they got outclassed, except for that Chargers game. Everything else, they're right there, and there's just a play or two to be made, and they're just not making that play. And I don't know if that's growing pains. I don't know how much of that's rookie quarterback, how much it's coach. But we could be having a completely different discussion and it wouldn't be a stretch.
Scott, is this defense where you thought it would be right now at this point? I mean, look, the turnovers they're getting, and Greg Williams is a very aggressive defensive coordinator, not his first rodeo. He knows what he has there. He knows his personnel in Cleveland there, and I think he uses it real well. Myles Garrett absolutely playing outstanding like he should be for a first-round draft pick. Is there any portion of this defense that you're surprised by at where they're at right now at this portion of the season? Do you expect them to play better?
I expect them to play a little bit better. I believe that the turnovers, nobody expects a team to get, I think they're at 19 now. That's a ton of turnovers, right? And they had 4 again last week. And that's just not usual, and you hope it continues the whole season. But it also masks some mistakes, and they're giving up a bunch of yards. And part of that is the philosophy. Let's give up yards and make them go 8 plays, and we're going to turn them over if they got to go 8 plays, or hoard them to a field goal. And that's part of Greg's philosophy. And they've been doing it well. And they've been limiting team points-wise most of the season. You know, a couple blips on your radar. And in today's NFL, I think you got to kind of have realistic expectations about what a defense can do anyway, because the rules are against you. Teams are lighting it up everywhere you look on offense. So, but I also think Myles Garrett, while he's got big numbers and you see the talent, needs to be more consistent, and he needs to take over games. And I don't think he's quite gotten there yet. He had a good game against Pittsburgh week 1, and that's as close as we've seen him to dominating. And he played another good game against Tampa. But I just want to see more consistency. They've had a couple injuries. They're down 2 corners. Joe Schobert, the middle linebacker's out. So I think there's room for improvement. But I do think Greg's doing about the best he can with what he's got. And, you know, Greg, he's creative from a personnel standpoint. And last week he took free safety Demarius Randall and matched him up against Mike Evans all game. And Evans caught passes, which he's going to do. But I like that creativity.
When you look at offensively, obviously Baker Mayfield going through that kind of developmental maturation process, a good throw here, a bad decision like the sack that you talked about here and all. I think offensively from the tape that I've seen, they're doing the best with what they have right there, especially when it comes to Todd Haley, who quite honestly I don't think is a bad offensive coordinator. And now you fast forward to after this game the other day, and Hugh Jackson saying what he said about maybe getting his hands involved in the offense. To me, this is setting up for a disaster here, especially knowing the kind of guy that Todd Haley is. Should he just leave well enough alone and let Todd do his job and go from there, or do you blame him, or what's the feel about this? And I assume Todd Haley's going to talk later on in the week, and that should be an interesting press conference.
Yeah, all Todd's press conferences are interesting, and when he talks Thursday, I'm sure everybody will be dialed in. I'll be there, paying attention, obviously, and really interested to see. Now, who knows? He might not say anything newsworthy or controversial, but we'll see, because you guys know Todd better than we do. But to answer your question, I thought Hugh handled it really poorly. And I know it was the frustration of losing another close game in overtime. And watching his offense fail to score a touchdown again in the first quarter. They've scored 6 points offensively in the first quarter in 7 games, 2 field goals. That's not going to get it done. But I think Hugh feels the pressure to win and knows that his job's hanging by a thread, and it manifests itself in comments after games. That should have been handled in-house. Even if he thinks he needs to take on a bigger role, the world doesn't need to know that. Just go do it. Tell Todd, hey, I'm going to suggest more plays. I'm going to be more involved in the game plans. Don't make a big deal about it in the media. And he did, and I think that's a bad look for Hugh. And, Todd hasn't been perfect. There's been play calls where you scratch your head. He's also working with a rookie quarterback, rookie left tackle, rookie running back, 2 rookie receivers. And, I think Hugh's got to take that into account. This offense is better than it was last year. And I'm not sure that there's been that much talent upgrade. Jarvis Landry's an upgrade. That's about it. Chris Hubbard's playing average at right tackle. So it's not like I think most of the improvements have been on defense. Baker's obviously a better quarterback than they have, but he's still a rookie, and he's still making some mistakes that a rookie makes. So I think Hugh needs to cut Todd Haley some slack. But I understand when you're head coach and you feel like your job could go away in a couple of weeks, you're going to do everything you can to save it. It just feels like desperate to me.
What about the trade they made for Carlos Hyde? I mean, it's obvious to me why they did it. It seems to make great sense. Look, Chubb's going to be your guy. Duke Johnson hasn't gotten enough burn. I think Duke Johnson's great, and he's hardly carried the ball. So you have the guys you want in the run game. You get something back in a 5th-round pick. You get out from under some salary. So it made great sense to me. How did you perceive it? And then how was it perceived in the locker room?
Well, all your points are correct. But it was still a surprise. I mean, this is the guy that was getting almost every carry, and he was effective. I know you can look at his 3.4 per carry average and go, that's not good enough. But he ran really hard. He was really good on the goal line, and I think he had 5 touchdowns. They might have all been from a yard. But that's important in this league. Some guys don't do that. He was good picking up the blitz most of the time. I know this locker room was shocked. I mean, it happened Friday afternoon. Guys are out of the building. He's been your starter all week in practice, and then you make that trade. So it caught guys off guard, including Nick Chubb, who took his spot, and Duke Johnson, the other running back, like you mentioned. But big picture is they needed to figure out a way to get more carries for Chubb and more playing time for Duke Johnson. And this is the easiest way to do it. And if you get a 5th-round pick back, why not do it? Chubb was going to be gone at the end of the season anyway. The only problem is if somebody gets hurt. If Chubb or Duke Johnson gets hurt in the next 10 weeks or 9 weeks, then you miss the depth that Carlos Hyde gave you. And you took a position of strength and reduced just a position that's fine. But I understand why John Dorsey did it. And it might have even been, and like I said, we haven't talked to Todd Haley since the trade. Todd Haley wasn't making that switch. Every week, Hugh Jackson said, we need to get Nick Chubb more carries. We need to get Duke Johnson the ball more. And it wasn't happening. And this is a way to guarantee that happening.
Yep. I understand that. What have you seen? We all got to see Baker Mayfield's debut, and that was pretty exciting stuff. Clearly, he's a rookie quarterback. But, with all the bumps and bruises that go with being a rookie quarterback in the league, has he been, we talked about him in the first time we spoke before week 1. Is he playing at the level that you would expect for kind of what you saw in training camp and through the preseason?
I would say overall, yes. There's been a couple of hiccups after such a great start. He won that game off the bench on the Thursday night against the Jets. And then he went to Oakland and put up 42. And you're like, oh, my gosh, it's going to be that like this every week. And then he came back down to earth. He scored 12 in a win over the Ravens. They get blown out against the Chargers, and Baker did not look good. He looked hesitant in the pocket. They hemmed him in, and he couldn't get outside the pocket, and that seemed to mess with him. And then he went to Tampa and played better, but was a slow start, played much better in the second half. And like I mentioned, the rest of the offensive lineup, the receivers are struggling. The line's struggling. So it's not all on Baker. But you see a couple cracks where you go, okay, he needs to work on this, he needs to work on that. But when you go, okay, the kid's played whatever it is now, 4.5 games. Overall, it's good. Overall, I think there's reason to be optimistic. Yes, he's got to figure out a few things about life in the NFL like any rookie quarterback does, and especially a rookie quarterback that's 6 feet tall. But he's accurate. He's got a big arm, and I like his decision-making. So there's no reason to think that Baker's not going to turn into who they want him to be.
How's Antonio Callaway coming along? I mean, this is a guy that got highlighted, a little bit during Hard Knocks and all, and it just looks like he's going through some of those growing pains right now. And I guess that's one of the main reasons. Well, that and injuries why Brashad Perryman was brought in recently as well.
Yeah, Callaway has been a boomer bust. He's made a couple big plays. He had a big touchdown catch late in the Saints game that they lost to tie the game. He made a great catch, but it's been too few and far between, and he'll disappear for stretches, even though he's playing a lot of snaps. And I don't know how much of that is not playing last year in Florida. He suspended all of last year in Florida. He didn't expect to play this many snaps. you're starting him and you're relying on him because there's no Josh Gordon anymore. Shard Higgins has been out a couple of weeks with the knee sprain. So he hasn't been good enough. And I think he needs to be a better route runner. He needs to be more consistent. And when they take those deep shots to him, he's got to make the play. And there was one against the Chargers that he didn't make, and it was a tough catch, but I thought he should have made it. So, they just need more out of him. I can't, the kid's young. He didn't play last year, so I hate to be too harsh on him. But if he's going to be starter, which he is, the Browns need more production from him, and they need more consistency.
Jannard Avery should be a Pittsburgh Steeler as far as I'm concerned. I really liked watching his tape at Memphis, and a little bit of envy, though, now that he's with the Browns. Pro Football Focus grades aside and all like that. What have you seen out of Jannard over the last couple weeks here?
Well, he's been good. He got off to a really hot start and then tailed off a little bit. I think his team started to focus on him, but he's a talented kid. He's super strong. He's primarily a pass rusher, but with Joe Schobert out, they had to play him at weak side linebacker, and he's dropped in coverage a little bit. He recovered a fumble last week. So I think he's been more than good enough for a fifth-round draft pick, and you just expect him to get better and better.
So how about the locker room for the Browns? Is there, one of the things in this kind of the 1-31 stretch, it never felt like the Browns gave up. I didn't get that impression. I know there are some people who like to write that whenever there's a bad performance, but it felt like it was pretty professional throughout the time. Is it, and Joe Thomas was always incredibly professional. Obviously, he's not there anymore. Is the mood in the locker room, generally upbeat and positive around this team?
It is, and I think inside the locker room, the expectations are higher than outside the locker room, and that started back in training camp when you're coming off 0-16. Guys still thought the talent was good enough to win, and they should win. Now, they come back to earth, lost 2 in a row, 2-4-1. But the locker room's still been good. It'll be interesting to see how guys like Jarvis Landry, if the losing continues, how he handles it. Even though he signed a giant contract, he's got that personality that you have to watch. But he's coming off a big game finally against Tampa after he struggled a little bit. So I think everything's going okay. The question that looms over this team and this organization is Hugh Jackson, right? Is he long for this team? What does he have to do to keep his job? All those things. And you never know when that's going to take on a life of its own. But so far, so good as far as, guys in the locker room.
So
if you had to guess now, when we're talking to you next year, is he going
to finish the season?
Yeah, is Hugh Jackson going to be the coach next year?
Yeah, well, next year I would bet heavily against it. Right. Yeah. That's the question. Does he finish the year? I think it's pretty 50-50 if he finishes the year. These next 2 weeks are important. The Browns play at Pittsburgh, and then they host Kansas City. If he can steal one of those games and get a signature win, I think that buys him the rest of the season. If they get blown out and they lose then Atlanta and they go into the bye with a 5-game losing streak, then I think if you're Jimmy Haslam and Dee Haslam and John Dorsey, the GM, you have to have a serious discussion about whether or not you let Hugh finish the season.
I'll tell you, Scott, I would not want to have at Pittsburgh hosting Kansas City and at Atlanta to decide my job. Honestly, that's not exactly the easiest road to hoe.
No, which is why Hugh might wind up regretting the loss to Tampa Bay, right? If you stem the tide, if you win in Tampa Bay, and you can say that about a couple of wins this year. If they had got, if they go into the bye at 4-6 or 3-7-1, I think you can make an argument that's significant progress. If they go in 2-7-1 with 5 straight losses, it's hard to make a case.
Yeah, I don't feel bad for Hugh Jackson, but I feel that's rough to have it go that way because obviously Vegas is certainly going to put the odds heavily that they're going to lose all 3 of those games. So give us a prediction. What happens on Sunday?
Yeah, I can't pick them to win. I've picked them a couple times recently and they wind up losing. It's a tough, obviously it's tough to win up there. You guys know that better than anybody. Pittsburgh's playing much better than they were when the Browns tied them in the opener. It just feels like a lot of stuff going against the Browns, especially coming off another overtime loss. So there's no way I can pick them. But having said that, I wouldn't be stunned if they played a really good game, and kind of tried to make a last stand there against Pittsburgh.
Scott, man, it's always fun to talk to you. We love our guests, but you're one of the best, and appreciate the time. And it doesn't look like the Steelers and the Browns are going to meet in the playoffs, but we'll look forward to talking to you during the offseason.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Okay, Dave, always fun to talk to Scott. Good stuff. So, I guess the question is, what's my bookie making on the odds of Hugh Jackson winning one of the next 3 games, if that might be his job?
I don't know. Well, what is that? Did they have a number up on that? I haven't even looked.
No, but we should look. Hugh Jackson finishing out the season. What would you make? Even money? Finish the season? I think that's what Scott made. Even money to finish the season. I really wouldn't want at Pittsburgh, hosting Kansas City, and at Atlanta to determine my job. Or I might, you might have a silver bullet waiting for you when you leave the Mercedes-Benz Dome.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I mean, say what you will about that Falcons defense, but that offense. That offense can still move the football, I think. And another interesting aspect about this upcoming game against the Steelers is, look, you have a Steelers team getting healthier coming off the bye, and then you have a Browns team that's played a whole lot of defense. I mean, a lot of snaps in total, and you worry about that from the defensive side of football, I think, more than anything. So I think there are going to be some tired bodies running around there at Heinz Field wearing the opposition's colors. So it'll be interesting to see if we can get some odds up on mybookie.ag here on Hugh Jackson pretty soon. Regardless, I had the man. I gave the man a battle this past week,
did you take it in the shorts last night? I mean, boy, if you were playing that game and you're wondering why Eli's running quarterback sneaks, and B, why the hell don't you just kick the field goal? If you had the Falcons, you could have been, it might not have mattered, but you could have been a very upset individual with that long pass down the left sideline, etc. It was a little bit rough.
I had +5, David. I was nervous. I was sweating it at the end. But,
you got a gift. You got a gift.
Yeah. Why do you think I posted that guy kicking in the back door?
I missed that. I had the Twitter machine off last night after about 10 o'clock, so I missed that. But what was that fourth down that Odell Beckham made that catch? Because first of all, the DB didn't play it very well, and second of all, it was a great catch. I don't know if it was a great throw, but he threw it. So a good throw and a great catch. Was that fourth down or third down? I'm
trying to think. I don't remember what down it was, to be honest with you, David. It was 3rd and 1 from Atlanta 1.
Yeah, and the time was running fast. But anyway, so did you had a good weekend with the man, or that made it an okay weekend?
All I did was win.
Oh, nice. Well, my bookie AG, one of the great things about them is they don't even take a cut when you win. That's why you want to get going over there. You can get involved and play some 3-team parlays. If you had parlayed the weekend, you get your house back. All sorts of things. And again, prime time. You got baseball, World Series, baseball, hockey, Pens out in the West Coast swing. You've got NBA going on, NFL. This is prime. If you like to get action, this is prime time. And we know that the one bet you'll be happy with all year is going to mybookie.ag. We trust them. They've been in business for years. Great reviews, great mobile site, fantasy stuff, over-unders, do what you want. And they'll still match it dollar for dollar if you use that promo code TERRIBLE. Get involved. One of my buddies has got involved at the beginning of the season, and he's taking cash out. When you're taking cash out, it's all good. So promo code TERRIBLE, match you dollar for dollar up to 100%. Check it out. You play, you win, you get paid. All right, so it was as we do this Tuesday night, some of you may have noticed our reference to the game last night. I will be traveling during the day Wednesday, and both Scott and Dave were kind enough to accommodate me, and with kind of an off day Tuesday, moving to Tuesday night instead of Wednesday morning doesn't make a lot of difference. We heard from Ben and Mike today. Dave, impressions? Anything significant jump out at you?
I thought they'd be maybe a little bit healthier than what they are, but Mike Tomlin Talked about Morgan Burnett with that groin working some yesterday being Monday, the bonus day, and he'll continue to work in a partial capacity, according to Tomlin. We'll let that be our guide in terms of potential availability, yada, yada. I am not expecting, based on the comments Morgan Burnett made last week during the bye week, and based on what Tomlin said on Tuesday, I'm not expecting Morgan Burnett to play. He also basically said the same thing goes with Darius Hayward-Bay with an ankle and L.J. Fort with an ankle. Both those players evidently, practice some had some participation level during Monday. Obviously, the Steelers don't have to file an injury report to let us know that level of participation until Wednesday. So those will be the two names I think to watch will be Darius Hayward-Bay and L.J. Fort. You would think, and that's dangerous to do when you're talking about injuries, that L.J. Fort probably the closer of the two, even though Darius Hayward-Bay has been out the longer period of time. And I say that only because L.J. Fort was able to finish that game against the Falcons, and then that thing probably ballooned up on him a little bit, and then, of course, was off the game before the bye against the Bengals, and, of course, had the bye week. We'll see. But here's the thing about Darius Hayward-Bay. I'm not expecting him to play. Because of the sheer fact, some of the things that Ben Roethlisberger said during his Tuesday radio session, where he, said that, he was asked about James Washington, and, he gave a positive, progress report on James Washington and all like that. But in so many words, Ben said that, he wants to continue to Justin Hunter out on the field. Sprinkled in along with the rookie Washington there. So it's impossible to dress all these guys at the same time. And look, before Darius Hayward-Bay went down, we were seeing Hunter. We were seeing Hunter inactive, and now, of course, you could go back to week 1 where all of them were active, but I think those days are over with. So I'm not expecting Darius Hayward-Bay to be active Sunday at Heinz Field against the Browns. I would expect Justin Hunter to be up, and we'll see how long that lasts. It'll be interesting once Darius Hayward-Bay does get back to full health, how they try to, how they treat this thing. Because Darius Hayward-Bay is obviously, a far better special teams player than Hunter is. Hunter gives you nothing on special teams. However, it sounds like Ben has some level of comfort with Justin Hunter, and we saw going back to that game against Cincinnati that Hunter was on the field, during that next to last offensive possession that got down into the red zone, and then Hunter was completely on the field instead of James Washington during that game-winning drive. And say what you will about whether or not that block was legal on the touchdown, to Antonio Brown, It counted, and Ben Roethlisberger praised him for it. So
I got a little inside. I got a little inside baseball on some of that in the past week, where James Washington's been a disappointment is the view in the facility, but they don't feel like his talent level is a disappointment, and some of it is. And it's just, it's just the natural progression. They saw good things in the preseason. They like what they've seen out of him. They thought it would all come a little quicker. Some of it, again, as you're right to point out, is, you can only do so much if the quarterback's not finding you, getting you the ball. So I think there's disappointment, but they're not down on James Washington, if that makes sense. You can be disappointed with the output, but it's not like they think he's a different player than he was when they drafted him.
Well, here's the thing, too, though. Remember, this guy is asked to play really one primary position on the field. You're for obvious reasons, you're not going to move him side to the slot, right? It's just not what he does. So, he's basically you go deep guy. And when you're primarily you go deep guy, how many balls a game are you going to get? That goes back to Martavis Bryant. How many times a game was Martavis Bryant targeted on average? And if Ben wasn't sharp with his deep ball, Martavis wasn't making a difference in the game. Now, did Martavis tend to get more separation of what we've seen out of James Washington so far? Yes, but I think you're dealing with a player in Washington that's asked to really do one thing so far, and He's not.
Well, that's a little bit on him, because if they're not comfortable that, like they weren't with Sammy Coates, and obviously we've talked about Martavis's development. I mean, you've got to develop into Manny Sanders or whatever and show that you can run the route tree. So I don't have an answer to that. I think it's a fair point. And we'll see here in the second half of the season whether his routes are expanded in terms of what he's asked to do. The second part of that is there are still people in that facility who like Justin Hunter. One of the things that, at least I've heard, is that he's a bit soft and he doesn't like to get hit, and, maybe doesn't like to block as much as he should. So, we've not seen him do a lot of that. We haven't seen him on the field that much, to be honest. But there is clearly, there's a belief in his talent level. Let's put it that way, that he has some talent, which is why, I wasn't sure he was going to get invited back this year. He did. And because he didn't have a lot of competition, he made the team. So, I think it will be interesting to watch here in the second half of the season to see whose role expands more in the second half of the season, Justin Hunter or James Washington, or neither. And the third thing is on DHB. I just feel bad when anybody gets hurt because another guy committed a penalty. And that's why DHB got hurt on that punt block. He was going to go in and block a punt. Guy pulled him down and ripped his ankle apart in the process. So, DHB, good locker room guy, good team soldier, a very high drafted guy who's, making a living out of being a special teams guy. Hate to see a guy get hurt on that kind of stuff. I've said it a couple of times, so I'll leave that one go.
Justin Hunter last season had 4 catches for 23 yards and a touchdown. So far this season, he has 1 catch for 6 yards. I mean,
his biggest thing he's done as a Steeler was clearly the block on the touchdown play, no doubt.
So what I'm getting at is Washington better see the lion's share of the snaps going forward. There's no reason for that not to happen. If Hunter's out snapping him, then you made a wrong choice.
Well, it doesn't mean you're not going to write a kid off 8 games into his career. Just see what happens. Maybe they're both out there in 4 wide receiver sets and Switzer gets less time and Hunter all of a sudden starts making plays. No, I'm with you. I think clearly they think Washington has the higher upside, so you'd think he'd get the snaps, but it'll be interesting to see because, money was on the line with Cincinnati in the Cincinnati game, and we saw who was out there. So.
Well, I think Washington's suffering in the public perception because of how Juju progressed last year.
I don't know that I haven't seen a lot of people ripping James Washington. I think we've said all along, I know I've said all along, don't compare to what Juju did. And Juju did most of his work in the second half of the season. So still time for Washington to be a valuable contributor.
Yeah, my caution is give this guy a couple more games, this kid a couple more games to let's see, because I watched every snap that he took at Oklahoma State, and look, I'm not predicting he's going to be the second coming of whatever here. But, I mean, this guy has a lot of talent, and he can separate. And he can separate against off coverage, and he can separate against man coverage. Now, in the NFL, those corners in the NFL are a lot different than those ones in the in the Big 12, that he's come out of there. So I think he's got to learn. There's certain things that he's got to learn about learning how to better get on top of some of these guys at the NFL level. And if he's able to accomplish that, we've seen him combative catch and things like that during the preseason. We know he's that kind of guy coming out of college. Let's give him about 3 or 4 more games though before we pass kind of hard judgment on him. And look, I understand Ben wanting to get to get Hunter on the field more, or at least some. But look at what Hunter's given you so far during his career and really his NFL career as a whole.
Yeah, sorry. I'm not advocating for Hunter. I'm just interested to see how it goes. So, yeah, we'll just see how it plays out.
But I do think it was telling that you saw at the end of the Bengals game. I mean, well, look, Washington played 16 snaps, Hunter played 14, and most if not all of Hunter's snaps came there in those final couple of drives. So, that there's a little bit to read into that. So let's see what happens here.
And that's a little bit why somebody told me what they told me over the past week. So. Okay, Ben, Mike, Mike didn't want to, obviously not going to get involved in the speculation or nonsense, as he says. in terms of Patrick Peterson, so that's no surprise there. Anything else stick out?
Yeah, talking about Morgan Burnett, and it's gonna, you want to talk about a guy that's going to be interesting to see what happens with him moving forward here is, Tomlin, in so many words, said this guy's got to get healthy and show us he can stay healthy before we talk about any role that he's going to have. But I think it is going to be interesting to see actually what kind of role Morgan Burnett has when he does get healthy, because you've through all of this, you've been able to get Terrell Edmunds on the field, and like it or not, he obviously the first four games or whatnot, not great when it comes to Edmunds. I think we've seen some good stuff out of him the last couple of games. You're probably, unless Edmunds gets injured or unless Edmunds goes through a string of incredibly bad performances, Burnett's not going to be your starter anymore, right?
Hard for me to imagine now that that Edmunds has gotten the experience that he's gotten, that unless they're seeing something different on film, or as you say, something happens going forward, that you would displace him. Maybe you share time, but I would be surprised. Yeah.
Mike was obviously asked about Artie Burns and where he sits with him right now as well too. Look, I don't know how this thing's going to work out with Artie Burns. We talked about maybe you sit Artie Burns down, for a little bit here. I don't, as much as we think that maybe should happen, I don't think that is going to happen. I think Artie and probably going to split time with Cody Sensabaugh here moving forward, and we'll just have to wait and see how it goes.
Yeah, so it sounds like Artie. So here's a stat for you that if you like Football Outsiders, everybody loves the work Dave and Alex and Matthew and everybody else does on the charting and getting into the details. And we've done the adjusted net yardage stuff over the past 2 weeks. Football Outsiders does some similar work that's very good. One of the pioneers in the field. And their DVOA stat basically they look at all this stuff by metrics, and you can go to the site and read. I won't explain it here on our conversation, but the Steelers have played the offense is the Steelers have played ranked third cumulatively in the NFL. Tampa and Atlanta have played the two best offensive groups so far this season, including each other. And their defense is ranked 31st and 32nd, respectively, by Football Outsiders rankings. The Steelers have played the third most difficult group of offenses so far, and their defense ranks 14th. Excuse me. Now, I'm not making a case here for the Steelers one way or the other. I do think their defense improved in the past couple games. I thought actually, maybe not everybody saw it the way I saw it, but I thought in the Ravens game it was pretty good. And I thought in the Bengals game it was pretty good, but with glaring mistakes in both games, of course. And I'm just pointing this out as point of fact that they played pretty good offensive teams this year. And
that kind of go back to what I was trying to argue the other day. At how much stock do you put into that Kansas City game? Because let's be blunt. I mean, that game is skewing their stats right now, especially when it comes to adjusted net yards per passing attempt. And I guess in so many words, that's kind of my, I wouldn't say argument, but maybe this past defense isn't maybe as bad as what that number is telling us it is right now. I think so. So I think what Football Outsiders is doing is taking that into account, which is part of my point here. And so the Steelers get some points for having played good offenses, as do the Bucs and the Falcons. But they've been torched so badly, so consistently that they haven't stepped up at all. What's it going to be? The Chiefs are going to play 12 different teams, so 12 different defenses are going to get scorched over the course of the season. And if somebody goes in and is able to shut them down, well, they deserve all the credit in the world. It's just you're going to and it's like the Patrick Peterson thing. I just had a guy tweet me and say, if Colbert doesn't get him, it's dereliction of duty. If he doesn't get Patrick Peterson. Why do you hate the Steelers so much, David? I'm gonna unfollow you on Twitter.
Unfollow. I mean, it's like, well, then 19 GMs ought to be fired when he gets traded, or 20 when he doesn't get traded. Because
of course you should call about him. I mean, what you'd be foolish not to call about him. But okay, go. We already had this conversation. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, we don't need to have it again. It's just, to assume that if they don't get him, they didn't try, or that, it's dereliction of duty. You don't think that the Saints made that phone call before they got Eli Apple? You don't think that happened? You don't think the Chiefs are looking around for a corner right now, desperately knowing that they have an offense that is better than anybody in the league? The Rams lose the corner, one of the corners they got this year, and Tremaine Johnson left, and you don't think they'd like to, you talk about teams that have a chance to win the Super Bowl. The Steelers aren't in the top 4 or 5, but the Patriots, you don't think they'd like to have a corner right now that was as good as Patrick Peterson? Sure, everybody would. The Eagles, the Vikings.
I love to use stats and especially that adjusted net yards per passing attempt and some of these other like the DVOA of Football Outsiders and take all that into consideration and match it up to tape and try to evaluate and use it as a predictive tool of what this defense may or may not be, especially when it comes to pass defense the rest of the way, from, let's say, the first half of the season to the second half of the season. But quite honestly, now, and we've talked about this a little bit here in the last show and this show, obviously, if you throw out that Chiefs game and take into account that they, the Falcons' pass offense is not a bad pass offense, right? I mean,
it's an excellent pass offense.
All right. Do we really know where the Bengals fit in?
And that's the other game I meant to throw in there about the Steelers playing well. Since the Ravens game, not everybody's going to agree on that. They played well against the Falcons, and they caused Matt Ryan to not play well. And generally, they played well against the Bengals. You hate giving up that last touchdown, but
All right, now here's where I'm going with this. What are we going to learn about the Steelers' pass defense, honestly, in let's say these next 4 games against?
Well, you could learn if they're bad, for sure. You can learn if they're as bad as many people think. If Baker torches them, and then Flacco torches them, kind of again, or is able to move the ball consistently, then it's up there.
What if the Steelers go 3-1 or 4-0? And let's say their adjusted net yards per passing attempt number in these next 4 games and these next 4 games.
And who is that? Is it the Browns, the Ravens, the Panthers, and the
Jaguars?
Jaguars. Yeah. So you're gonna play 4 not great passing quarterbacks. I mean, you say Flacco's having a decent year. Let's give him the credit he deserves. And Cam's a wild card.
Let's say you come out of those 4 games with a 3-1 or a 4-0 record,
yep.
which quite honestly you should and probably better.
If you beat the Ravens, that better be the case.
Okay, and you come out of this with out of these 4 games alone, you're looking at let's say adjusted net yards per passing attempt number of mediocre, let's say 5.76 or something like that. But yet you've won.
The narrative is going to be that they got better. And that has been a consistent theme that not many people want to recognize, that Mike Tomlin's teams have gotten better over the course of the season.
Will we not be forced? I mean, look, I'm not going to be patting anybody on any backs after those 4 games, regardless of what the numbers tell me, because I know what's on the other side of the football with all 4 of those teams. All right. Now, we're not going to me. I don't think we're going to really learn about this team defensively and the pass defense until we get to the Broncos, the Chargers, the Patriots, and the Saints. I mean, 4 out of obviously the Raiders now. I mean, geez, you want to talk about a game that maybe we were kind of wondering how that one was going to go at the start of the season. Other than having to travel to the West Coast. And the whole West Coast Tomlin plays down to whatever narrative you want to come up with that, regarding that game. I mean, let's be honest, we're not scared so much about the Steelers playing the Raiders on the road right now. But when you talk about the Broncos, the Chargers, the Patriots, and the Saints later on in the season, I think that's when we're going to really find out what this pass defense really is. I don't think, and like you said, as long as they don't come out of these next 4 games with another 6.3 whatever net yards per passing attempt number, I don't think we're going to learn too much about the pass defense, about this team right now after these next 4 games.
Man, if I were an NFL player, defensive back, I think Drew Brees and Phillip Rivers are 2 guys I do not want to play right now. You know, those guys are old guys who are playing, both of them maybe playing the best football of their lives. They are fun to watch. They are getting it done.
And when we know this team could probably, at least we think we know this Steelers offense can score against the Patriots, right?
We would think. I mean, look, you know, this team, you know, it'd be interesting to see if they can score against the Ravens again, because the Ravens all of a sudden, you know, look like they might have a really good defense. So we'll see if the Steelers can do a better job than they did at home, and that's going to be a big task. The Saints just they're as good as anybody, it seems like, on offense. They put up 24 there. See if the Steelers can do that and hold them. So.
And look, this is still a Jaguars defense with a lot of good players on it as well, too, right?
Yeah, no doubt. The fact that they haven't been playing well doesn't necessarily bode well, you know, going forward. The fact that the offense stinks is good.
I mean, I guess what I'm getting at, the Steelers should be able to beat these next 4 teams without Patrick Peterson.
Yeah. Well, Carolina. Let's not just dismiss Carolina. They're a tough team to read, and they just beat the Eagles. So let's see.
All right. Needless to say, and we'll get into this a little bit more, previewing the Cleveland Browns on the Friday show, though. This is a Cleveland Browns team the Steelers should not tie this time, right?
Yep, they should win.
All right. Anything else to add about what we heard out of Tomlin and Roethlisberger before we get out of here?
No, let's leave it for Friday. We've gone a lot of time without a game, so we'll get into the nitty gritty on Friday and go from there.
All right, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. You can follow David Todd on Twitter at David M. Todd. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and you want to donate to the cause, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit that donate button up right navigational bar, and that'll take you to PayPal where you can set something up that way. If you like SteelersDepot.com, want an ad-free version of that, we have that available for $25 a year as well too. Go to SteelersDepot.com, hit ad-free in the upright navigational bar. Shout out to Scott Petrick. Thanks for joining us again. Make sure you reach out to him on Twitter as well too, and thank these guys for coming on the show. That way they know their time is appreciated by our listenership as well. Okay, David, until Friday.
Yep, and save those donations, because we'll be making a big push next week for Ravens Week. Get ready, get the wallets out. As always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Dave.